use that. That is a very simple example on how tariffs are important and how they can benefit the American economy. Now you might go, yeah, but we're getting cheaper prices. Sure you are, but you're getting crappier stuff.
An inferior product, and your own internal economy is falling apart. People are losing jobs. And you're undermining your national security because you're dependent on somebody who could potentially be your enemy to build your weaponry.
Okay, let's talk about the economy, right? We can transition straight from COVID to the economy. I mean, it's a good one to transition to, considering the whole goal of this was to destroy the economy. That was the goal of all of this, because like you said, the whole goal of the shutdown was, okay, let's get our hospitals ready. Let's get ventilators. Let's get everybody staffed up. Let's make sure we have the infrastructure to take on this virus when it hits the population. Because what you're trying to do is there's a curve here, right? There's a line, right? There's a line. And what you're trying to accomplish is that the amount of people getting the virus doesn't spike too far above that line, because that line represents our infrastructure. It represents our resources. So can we keep the people below that, spiking below that line? So we have to raise the line, right? That was the whole goal. That was what we were trying to do, so that when it spiked, our line was high enough that we could keep enough people staffed up and resources available to protect people throughout the virus. That was it. And I get that. That's an absolute thing we ought to do. But then all of a sudden, it became unending lockdowns. Like, we have to lock down until it goes away. Until there's not
a vaccine.
Until there's a vaccine. Like, what's his name in New York City? Not de Blasio. Como. He said, one person is too many. Well, hell, you ain't ever going to open back up. Like, what are you talking about? One person is too many. You know, but like, that is pandering to his audience, and everybody's at home going, yes, one person is too many. Right? Just make sure my check comes in next month, because I don't know what I'm going to do if it doesn't. Right? And it's like,
as you're sitting on your couch munching on Doritos and donut holes.
And I'm like, dude, like, are we really listening to this? One check is too many. But let's go back to, so we have that premise is understood. Let's go back to what Trump did, though. Again, I think we've already talked about it in the COVID thing, but I think that is so important to see the selflessness of what he did. We are in an election year. His whole re-election is based off one thing, the economy, and he shuts it down. Now, I can see somebody on the other end going, yeah, but if he didn't, it would have got out of hand and he would have still got not re-elected. And I'm like, yeah, okay, if you're going to believe that, you're going to believe that. I can't do anything for you. But he shuts the economy down. That's mass suicide for him. I mean, that's game over for him. He's not getting reelected at that moment if he shuts that down. And he does it. He makes the decision to do it, right? Because it is in the benefit of the American people until we figure out what's going on. Because he is for the American people, right? He's for the American people. But prior to that, you know, again, this is something that blows my mind too, that moderators let people get away with this in debates. That these Democrats keep talking about how Trump doesn't have a great economy because he's lost it. Like, they don't even use COVID caused the economy to get to where it was. If you don't know that, if you haven't been paying attention, it was COVID's fault, not Trump's. I know they want you to believe differently in a debate, but for the love of God, I hope you noticed that. You moved my thing back.
But just see the circular argumentation even. I mean, but... So I mean, that's absurd, and it is. But
both of them brought it up in the debate. Both of them talked that way.
Well, just because it's absurd doesn't mean that prevents a Democrat from using it as a talking point. But look at the accomplishments. And, I mean, we could sit there and go through the statistics.
3% unemployment. We've never seen that in our lifetime. 3% unemployment.
Record low in all these demographics that Trump supposedly hates, you know.
We're going to segment into that next. That's coming next.
But I would say that just the overall high-level policies, whether it's battling with China and getting more back on some sort of equal playing field with them, protecting our technologies, going back and reigniting our industry sectors, whether that's oil, natural gas, coal, all these things, but also steel production and all these other crucial elements and materials that are important for.
I have a metal fabrication business.
They're important for not only our overall industry, but they're important for national security. We're buying aluminum, steel, and all these things from China. We're using compromised materials in our weaponry. I mean, like these things that are absurd. And I would assert that it has been an intentional policy effort in recent decades to undermine the United States. And Trump, by making America great again, recognizes the folly of previous administration policies.
Yes.
And this is going back decades, both Republican and Democrat. Absolutely. And the decline of the U.S. economy. So these types of big level decisions that are probably most people aren't even paying attention to, that are really going back to bring back manufacturing, bring back the production of these essential materials, making us more energy independent and independent overall in our economy, making us more of an exporter versus an importer. All these things that make us stronger. And it's not just about data and money statistics. It's about internal strength.
Well, there's not many domestic steel companies left, right? There's just not. And if you pay attention, I have a metal fabrication shop, so I've been learning about this stuff just because I see the impact.
Trying to put us out of business by flooding our market with cheap things. That's what
the level of standard that we have in the steel companies in America versus the steel companies in China. They're using recycled metals, like recycled metals. It is crap metal, but they're able to sell it to us at a very low cost, and we have no regulation on it. We don't care. Right? We don't care. And I would be really interested in who has ownership in the last remaining steel companies here, because there's no competition left, and who has ownership in the steel in China as a whole. But like just that simple example of the fact that they make you use a certain quality of steel here versus recycled material over there, you're never going to compete with that. You can't compete with that, right? So unless you have tariffs to attach to that crappy steel to keep it out, then you're never going to be able to use that. That is a very simple example on how tariffs are important and how they can benefit the American economy. Now you might go, yeah, but we're getting cheaper prices. Sure, you are, but you're getting crappier stuff.
An inferior product, and your own internal economy is falling apart. People are losing jobs, and you're undermining your national security because you're dependent on somebody who could potentially be your enemy to build your weaponry.
And another thing people don't understand, because this is why governments that want to be fascist hate entrepreneurship, because in the journey of entrepreneurship, you learn things, right? There's so many people that were liberal in college, and then they got out into the world and they wanted to be an entrepreneur, and they started realizing how these policies affected them, and they were like, I hate these people. But you never had to feel it in college because you were just like, yeah, free college, man. Let's just hang out and have a good time, right? And you never had to feel the impact of policy. That's why.
Or it can be very theoretical. I mean, I thought about these things starting in college.
But they didn't affect you.
Yeah, right. I mean, you didn't see so much how it played out, and it's selective.
So corporate tax cuts. I know the Democrats want to always say he's just trying to give tax cuts to his big buddies up there on Wall Street. No, corporatism is more embedded with the Democratic strategy than it is with the Republican strategy. Corporatism,
Wall Street loves Democrats.
All those people. Warren Buffett is a card-carrying Democrat. He always has been. Like all those
and
people.
Republicans, some Republicans for sure. But
No,
I'm just saying.
for sure. But I am framing it up as red and blue. It's not red and blue.
Yeah.
We already said last week we hate Bush. Bush is one of them. We're not Bush fans. So let's not frame it up as red and blue, because we're not. I don't know where we stand.
But the Democrats who would frame their talking points around the elitist Republicans just trying to help the rich get richer, and they're acting in the interest of the common American.
That's garbage.
Total garbage.
I mean, look at all the tech companies. All those guys, they're embedded with the deep state, and we've talked about that already. But that's my point. All this idea that Trump is just embedded with his buddies up there at the top and he's giving tax cuts to them is ludicrous, because I, as a business owner, felt the benefit of the tax cuts. And so did you. You felt the benefits of the tax cut. Pence even brought it up. $4,000 on average the last 3 years it has given the American people in their houses. But I being a business, and most people don't understand this, you will. Most people don't understand that you can have the best year of your life in business and still go broke. And the reason is it's called this little thing called cash flow. Cash flow is the most important thing to any manufacturer on the planet, because I can be having a great year and run out of cash flow, and now all of a sudden I get hit with a big tax bill at the end of the year and I can't pay my taxes because I've ran out of my cash flow working, doing a lot of jobs, or I can't take that next job because I don't have the cash flow to take it. Why? Because maybe my materials, for instance, quick example, because people need to understand this kind of stuff. Let's say I get a job opportunity for $200,000. Well, my materials may end up being 40% of that job. So I immediately have to pay $80,000 in materials. I have to have the cash flow to float that for at least the next 3 months, because it might take me, let's say, 6 weeks to do the job, and then I don't get paid for another month after I produce it. So I have to have a certain amount of cash flow to continue to float that. Well, if I got my cash is all out there and then another job comes in for $200,000, I can't even do the job. I can't do the job because I don't have the cash flow. Well, at the end of the year, let's say I've done a ton of jobs and I got a bunch in accounts receivables, but it hadn't been received yet. And now all of a sudden I got a big tax bill and I'm like, hey, I need this. And they're like, well, I need my taxes. And I'm like, I ain't got the money right now to pay my taxes, right? So these tax cuts helped local businesses in cash flow. Like, I've had a great opportunity, praise God, to grow over the last 3 years because of these tax cuts. If you come in and they get rid of these corporate tax cuts, I am not going to be growing anymore over the next 4 years. I actually will probably, sorry guys at my work, but have to let people go. If you're watching it, I hate to say that, but I've already told you that. We've talked about this. Imagine that. I talk about these things with my employees. They're probably got their headphones on. Yeah, Caleb, yeah. But I'm going to probably have to let people go and figure out how to downsize, how to make it through the next 4 years until we restructure taxes again so that I can think about growing. But if you get rid of the tax cuts, I'm not thinking about growing, because now as a business owner, I have to think about my family. I can't think about growing and how I can hire more people and benefit more people. Because guess what, guys? The people with businesses, they don't have to work, a lot of them. The big guys can go home. You're the one that needs a job, right? And so you better think about that.
When people think that if somebody who already has money gets a tax cut, well, they're just stuffing it in their bank account.
Not true at all.
Well, and the people that operate maybe primarily in the financial world and Wall Street and that kind of thing, that kind of group, they really might, they just take it and pump it back into the market and speculate and make more money. But
as a manufacturer, you're not taking from your cash flow because that's your primary source of growth.
In actual industry that employs like a significant percentage of our country, we put it to work. And even if we invest it back in our business in a variety of ways, and part of that is of course, expanding and hiring more people.
Yes.
So and trying to retain, because it becomes a more competitive environment. We need to retain our people because they have more opportunities, perhaps elsewhere. So we got to pay them more now.
Yes.
All these things, it equals opportunity. It does spread out to others, and the people that tend to manipulate the situation more, and it doesn't impact the rest of the economy as much, might be more in the financial world, who, again, that side, they tend to be more supportive of the guys.
Let's drop this thing so we can buy it low, baby, and make all the money as it goes high.
So, I mean, and even this, and maybe this can be a bit of a segue into a couple of other things real quick, but just recognizing the other types of policy decisions that are a form of regulation that impact industry and environmental, as well as
regulation that small businesses can't afford, that large businesses can, that lobbyists fight for in Congress to keep competition at bay.
Yeah.
That's it right there. Large companies know what they can afford to keep the small business from being able to be competitive with them. So they have lobbyists in Congress that enforce these environmental programs that keep small businesses from being able to afford it, to be able to ever grow, to be able to compete with them.
It keeps you from being able to get started on projects or doing things. It slows the economy down so much that not only does it prevent things from happening, it's such a discouragement that it just depresses the willingness and the activity. People don't want to invest because they know that it just get tied up and never go anywhere. So you remove, and there's all kinds from environmental to other forms of regulation. So that's another way in which the Trump administration has removed a lot of these regulations that slow down the economy.
They have encouraged people to take risk because the reward at the end of the tunnel has been there. But
And that
when
means
you
jobs for people.
absolutely, that means jobs for people. But when you increase taxes and you increase regulation, business people with money are not your dad, my dad. They are not going out there and starting businesses because the reward's not there. You're not going to put up $2 million of your hard-earned money that you've worked your whole life for when the reward is minute at the end of the tunnel.
There'll be
It's
more
not
headache
worth it.
along the way than
it's
it's
not
worth.
worth it. And so for business people to put money out there, the reward has to be there. And for somebody to be so dumb to not understand that, we all feel that way. We all feel that way. The worker goes, well, I'm worth more money than that. Well, guess what? The only way you're going to get more money than that is if the businessman is willing to put his money up so that he can create the kind of jobs, like you said, that you can get more money for that. Because you don't make money for showing up at work. You don't make, my dad taught me this concept very early on. It has benefited me greatly throughout my life. I don't get paid for showing up. A business owner don't give two craps whether you show up or not. You get paid for making him money. And the more money that you can make him, the more money he's willing to pay you. Bottom line.
When if you have so many things in place that hinder the process, then in the same way, it's going to trickle down and affect the worker, affect the average person with less opportunities, less pay. So you consider another aspect of this on the side of regulations, but specifically environmental regulations, and you want to point at the Trump administration and this type of policy approach of being anti-environment or not concerned about the climate and these kind of things. But look at the impacts. Look at what you're asking for. Those kind of policies put so many restrictions on industry that it is crippling. And I would say that is actually the intention from those who desire to destroy the America and our economy. But if you just see how it plays out, I mean, just look at the simple the task we have at competing with China when China doesn't have these same sort of regulations that they put in place on their industries. They don't
care if you chop your hand off.
Well, yeah, I mean, whether it's workers' rights or whether it's environmental concerns, and so they're not having to invest money and spend money on trying to make sure they're not putting carbon in the atmosphere, and so down the line, they can then sell us products for way cheaper because they didn't have to deal with all these regulatory costs involved. And so then that undermines our economy. China's flooding our market with these cheap goods because they can be more competitive because they're not having to deal with the same parameters in terms of regulation. But we undermine ourselves, destroying our own economy in the process.
Yes.
And meanwhile, China's just pumping fossil fuel.
It amazes me that you can be on the side of for the environment, which almost all, the Green New Deal, right? And then also be for not pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. The reason we pulled out is because other countries were unwilling to do the regulatory things that they ought to be doing, that they're asking us to do. But people don't understand how that affects business, right? We're having to uphold these regulations and pay for them. So our competitive advantage on the world on the world and in the world market is dead. We have no competitive advantage.
We are at a disadvantage.
So
we are putting ourselves in the position to disadvantage ourselves.
Yeah, so we have no products to sell on the world because our prices of our products are so high because nobody else is paying attention to the regulations. And it's like, no, we need to get back in it and just let it keep doing what it was doing instead of pulling out of it and going, okay, look, if we want to do this thing, you're all going to implement the same regulations so that the climate can be healthy and we'll pay what you'll pay. But we're not going to keep fronting all the money, and we're not going to keep putting all the regulations on us, and you're going to keep putting all these carbon emissions into the air so that it's really not affecting the world. The world's still getting pretty crappy with all the carbon emissions. But how can you be on the side of the environment and also be for that, going back into that the way that it was already set up? It makes zero sense.
Well, people don't really think about all these things. It's a feel-good talking
Oh yeah, I
point.
forgot. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But that's what we are challenging people to do is because we get framed
We
up
let them
this
get
way.
away with this,
Right.
though, which drives me
we let
nuts.
the other political side frame us in this way, and we don't have good arguments in response often. So we get labeled as science deniers and people who must not care about the environment, or they're going to flip our argument. We don't care about the future. We're willing to destroy the earth, and our future is at stake. Well, this really gets
because we've never not ate. It's because we always have a 3-course meal ahead of us, right? We've never been in that country that has to think about not eating for 2 or 3 days.
And this is not even getting into the real science of what the cause of climate change is and all those things.
No, absolutely not.
Have
but
time to
it's
go
easy.
there
It's
right now.
easy to understand this. What we're doing on a world stage is we're saying, look, we're all for regulation. We're all for protecting the environment.
Yeah.
But everybody has to do it. Well, we need to be the leaders. We have been the leaders for the last how many years and nobody's paid attention.
You can't be a leader. the options are, and this is what they want us to do. Be a leader by shutting it all down. Don't let's go back and
let's kill all the cows so they don't fart anymore.
Let's go back and just live in harmony with nature. No, the way we actually provide for human beings' ability to exist and create the opportunity for our future human beings to have the most prosperity is to pursue relentlessly industry, science, technology, innovation.
Yes.
Because as we press through that, it may produce some more pollution in the meantime, and we should handle that responsibly. But as you press through, you have breakthroughs that then allow you to deal with the byproducts from your industrial process. Because what's one man's trash is another man's treasure. Everything that we waste right now is actually gold.
Yes.
Like it's something that we could use again, and we just simply have not been science enough. We have not been enough pro-science in industry and technology to have developed the solutions to deal with them.
Amen.
So instead, we just go bury it in the ground or pour it in the ocean somewhere.